topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. It's Tuesday, and I'm here with you. So, of course, it's one of my favorite mornings. It's a bit chilly where I'm at, and yet it makes you be grateful for those warm, sunny days, and especially fall. I love fall. It gets really nice and warm in the afternoon, and then you have got those chilly mornings and evenings. So I want to thank each and every one of you who have got our books. And I also want to thank each and every one of you who listens to our podcast, because recently we found out that our podcast is in top 10% globally. Yes, top 10% globally. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And also thank you for getting our books, because here's what I'll share with you. Not only the Entrepreneur's Garden is going to make your life the best life you can live, regardless whether you're an entrepreneur or not, because it's going to help you walk through different relationships, whether it's with money or whether it's with yourself, or whether it is with results or time or your life. And Expert to Influencer helps you become the influencer, not just with likes and numbers, but with someone that teaches you how to position yourself so that you can drive impact. I'm all about impact. And that's why when you get the books and leave us reviews on Amazon, more books are sold. And what we do is we take partial profits and help entrepreneurs at kiva.org. So it's a win-win situation. Everybody wins. And also remember to keep that kindness circle going. Really, really important. And today I want to highlight Jeremy, who is one of our listeners, and he shared his kindness story. So what he shared was that he was at Home Depot, and then he saw that this probably young gentleman, he had started working at Home Depot probably a month, and he didn't know how to help Jeremy when Jeremy was there and he was feeling flustered. So what Jeremy did was Jeremy put him at ease and said that, okay, why don't you take your time and walk me through? So remember that little kindness goes a long way. So yes, Jeremy was in a rush, but he recognized that this new associate was a newbie. And because he was somebody new at his job, the customer took that time to put him at ease. And I guarantee you that that young gentleman is going to remember that interaction for the rest of his life. So keep that kindness going and keep your stories coming, and we will be sharing your stories with everyone on Tuesday morning. So let's welcome our guest. Welcome, Douglas.
Divya, welcome to you, and thank you very much for having me on the show today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So usually we start out at the childhood. So do you recall any moment when you were young that stands out for you even today?
Yes, I do. And actually, it relates very closely to what we're talking about today. So when I was young, I was actually in bed one evening, just getting ready to go to sleep. And
Hmm.
my parents' bedroom is not far away. And I heard my father say, "I'm having a heart attack."
Oh.
And so I flew out of bed and ran into the bedroom and
Hmm.
revived him. And they called the ambulance, but he had actually a skipped heartbeat. It wasn't a bona fide heart attack, but he did have a very serious heart disease, and it's actually eventually what killed him. And that actually left a lasting impression on me. Believe me, when you're a young kid and you're reviving your dad, that
Of
really
course.
stays with you for a very, very long time. And after he died, I was never really happy with the explanation of what really causes heart disease. And that's actually what inspired me to talk about and to learn about what we're going to be talking about today. So that was one of the very lasting impressions when I was a kid.
Of course. It's oh, you said you were 15?
Yeah, I was, I don't even remember the exact age. I was somewhere between 13 and 15. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's very young, and it can be so traumatic, because for young kids, even though parents may not be cool at that age, yet parents are the anchor, and
Yeah.
parents are that rock that they know that no matter what, they can come back
Yeah.
to their parents, and to just kind of see that it can definitely be shocking.
Yeah,
So,
it was. And the funny, a bit of a funny story, and that is that so I knew how to give CPR, and I
mhm.
started it, and because he hadn't really had a heart attack, he said, "You're breaking my ribs." You got to stop that. So I did. So I was relieved to see, that he came around very quickly. I even beat my mother into the bedroom. She was in the kitchen at the time. So yeah, there you go. It was good that I had that training, um, even though it may not have actually been necessary.
Right. Well, that was your first response. And usually, so many youngsters at that age, especially if you're babysitting or if you're doing camp counseling or something like that, they are trained, and it's so helpful. And then that brings us to the point that it's important to know these life saving techniques at your hand. So, as you grew up, did you have a focus in one of the areas that you studied in, or where did your life take you?
Well, actually, I started out in pre-medicine. I was inspired, partly by this issue that we had just talked about, and also I had been working with disabled kids for quite some
Mm.
time. Um, but then I discovered I was really terrible at chemistry. and and that's because I had horrible chemistry. And speaks to what you're talking about. I had horrible chemistry teachers all the way through school, right from the start, and it kind of doomed me. So I actually moved on to other things, but I never forgot the healthcare side of things, and actually in quite early in my later life, that's the path I went down, but in a very different way, and that was through the environment and the impacts of the environment on our health, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Because in actual fact, um, heart disease is at its core an environmental disease. It's caused by environmental factors. You can be genetically disposed to it, but that doesn't mean you're going to get it. What causes you to get it is these various environmental factors that you're exposed to, and a lot of that is due to this hidden stress that you have mentioned. And this hidden stress is stuff that you don't see, you don't smell, you don't feel it. It starts at birth, and it starts to eat away at you. But the good news is that there's something you can do about it. And so that's what I learned over the years. My specialty became actually working with scientists and physicians on creating healthy environments for people so that they would actually not get heart disease in the first place. So I came at the medical side from actually the toxicology side.
Mm. So when
And
you say about like, you were working, you came from the other side. So did you study in toxicology?
I didn't. What I did was I ended up managing the scientists and the physicians who were working on toxicology. I was the guy that they love to hate because it's like herding cats. Especially scientists. Oh, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. So you really have to focus them on, okay, here's the goal. And it takes a little bit of doing, especially when you're working with, like, for example, companies, because they're looking
Right.
for
So tell us a little
results.
bit about that.
Yeah, and they're looking for results, and the scientists are, well, it could be this and it could be that, and we're not really sure. And that's definitely not what your clients want to hear. So steering that road between scientific accuracy and making company clients feel as though you're doing the right thing, and not just company clients, but government clients as well, that is a real challenge. And that's what I did for several decades. I taught
Mm.
designers and company experts how to design healthy products and environments to improve people's health, which is sorely missing in a lot of environmental initiatives. It's funny, but a lot of environmentalists have this glass wall between health and environment that somehow they don't relate to each other. But in fact, they're intimately related, and people relate much more closely to their environment when they understand how it can make them healthy and how it can make them sick. And that is why I decided to focus on that area. That was the theme running through the different companies and organizations that I started and managed over the years.
So, and then that makes sense. So tell us about when you talk about there's this hidden stress in the environment. What is that?
Well, the way I found this hidden stress was actually through the work on healthy products and toxins, because the scientists I worked with, who are from around the world, we actually developed the first certification protocol that was very strict on creating healthy products. And that certification protocol is recognized today by the US EPA. So we developed that many, many years ago, and we've been using it ever since to help people develop these healthy products. So as I was doing that, and keep in mind, I always had my father's health in the
Yeah.
background and what happened to him, I began to realize that actually there was a really close link between these stresses, these hidden stresses, and I'll explain that just right now. So these hidden stresses are two things. The first one is low levels of toxic metals. Now, the reason I say low levels is because sometimes when people hear toxic metals, they think of metal poisoning. This is not metal poisoning. This is what the American Heart Association has just recently identified as one of the major new threats to human health. And that is low levels of what is known as heavy metals. These heavy metals include, for example, lead, cadmium,
Cadmium,
and
mercury,
arsenic.
arsenic. Yeah.
Okay. And people who think that we've managed to get lead, for example, out of products,
Hmm.
just because we got it out of leaded gasoline many, many decades ago, there's a lot of other products that contain them. And just to give you one example, this year, Consumer Reports found after a 5-year study that, guess what? Baby foods are
Baby foods.
popular baby foods
Hmm.
are contaminated with these heavy metals, and pretty high levels as
And
well.
can you tell us how are they contaminated? Is it the water they're using? Is it some ingredients that's going into the products?
Right. That's the best question, because these have been with us ever since humans began to walk the face of the earth. Ever since we discovered fire and we started undertaking farming, we actually started uptaking these metals. And even before that, we were uptaking them because they occur naturally in the environment. And so they leach from the soil into water, and agricultural products take them up. as they take up nutrients. So, and if you are lighting a fire, you know that nice fire smoky smell that everybody likes because we've been trained for thousands of years that it keeps us warm? That's full of heavy metals. And so all of these ancient populations that were cooking and heating with these fires and had smoke all around, they were getting this heavy metal in them, and it builds up, it bioaccumulates in you. And that explains a lot why at first you don't notice it. It starts from birth. And then as you get older, it starts to build up in you. And then you start to develop these chronic conditions like inflammation. And a lot of times, your physician won't know what is triggering this. And that's because, and again, I refer back to the American Heart Association, who have said most healthcare providers today are not familiar with how to test for, diagnose, treat, or prevent low levels of heavy metal contamination. And that's why they've rung the alarm bell on it, because they have direct evidence of two things. Number one, it triggers heart disease based on 100 years of studies. But number two, when diabetic heart patients who have blockages in their arteries are treated for this and these metals are taken out of their body, they get better. And so here you have this very close link between treating an environmental hazard and patients improving. And that's why the AHA decided this year to come out with this official scientific statement saying, we have a new problem and we have some solutions to it. And so this is really exciting stuff. So that's the, in a nutshell, that's the toxic metal side. The other side of that, which we won't talk about as much today, but it's very important, is chronic infections, low-level infections. Some of them are, like plain everyday things like gingivitis, the stuff that gives you bad breath. Well, guess what? A lot of people with neurological conditions have been found to have the gingivitis bacterium in their brain, like 100% of them. And so what happens is you get this, what I call this total stress load, which is this combination of all of these hidden infections and these hidden metals, and they start to build up in you. And now it starts to become clear to people why they start to slow down as they hit their 30s, because all of this stuff is building up in you. And yet standard medical systems are not designed to look for this stuff. So this is, even though this has been known for years and years and years to scientists and researchers, the medical community is just beginning to wake up to it. And very recently, just a few months ago, in The Lancet, a new study was published showing that lead is actually ahead of smoking and cholesterol as a cause of death in heart disease. Can you imagine that? So
Well, very interesting. So you
Yeah.
have mentioned about, I'm sure that you know my next question. How can people get tested for the lead metals
That's a
and
great question.
or for any other heavy metals for
Yeah,
that
that's
matter?
a
And
great
how,
question.
what are the solutions? Like, let's
Right.
say, without going to the doctor, what can people do in the day-to-day lives?
Well, the great thing is that there's a ton of things that you can do, but I'm going to answer your first question first on the testing. The interesting thing is that most physicians they do a blood test they're trained to look for metal poisoning. So if they suspect any kind of metal poisoning, then they will do a blood test. The problem with these contaminations is they're not in your blood. They're in your tissue. That's where they lodge. So basically, you're breathing them in all the time from air pollution, from wildfire smoke, from smoking, from being near people who are smoking, from car tire dust that contains high levels of heavy metals. So from contamination in water. So all of this stuff is going in to your body, and it's building up, but it's not building up to the levels that cause metal poisoning, and that's the problem. It's a sort of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. It's this hidden stress. So actually, interestingly, there is a test that's available around the world in many, many places for this, and it is called a provocation test. Now, the provocation test or the challenge test involves infusing something called a chelator. chelator is actually a Greek word for to grab with a claw. So what this stuff does is it chemically grabs the heavy metals and takes it out, and you pee it out in your urine. And they measure that in your urine. Now, how did they find that out? How did they find out the link between, people getting better and this test? Well, the way they did it was that the test is actually also part of the therapy. It's just a lot shorter. It's a quicker test. So when they were giving them the therapy, as they got better, they discovered that high levels of heavy metals were coming out in their urine. And as those metals declined in their tissue, the patients got better. And that was the burning bush. That's what really showed it. So this test, you have to ask for it. And usually holistic doctors, integrative cardiologists, naturopathic doctors, and a lot of nurse practitioners will be familiar with this test, but the patient has to ask for it. And you have to be demanding, because most healthcare providers, they're not trained for it, as the American Heart Association said. And a lot of them still think that this type of thing is unproven. There's no clinical trials to show. And that is old stuff. The science clearly shows clinical trials, for example, sponsored by the National Institutes of Health over a period of 10 years, as well as clinical studies done on peripheral artery disease patients, very clearly show that these tests and this therapy are not only safe, but they're effective. And so we need to get rid of this myth. And this is part of the leadership that you're talking about, Divya. Patients need to take the leadership role and take responsibility for their health. If your healthcare provider has never heard of this, inform them. This is what you can do as a patient. And if they don't like what they're seeing or hearing, get a second opinion. And that's not me talking again. This is the physicians who are working on these things. I'm not a physician myself, as I mentioned earlier, but I have a lot of experience with looking for these toxic metals. So that's how the testing works. Now, to your second question, what other things can people do about this? Well, there's really one simple thing that everybody can do, and that is improve the air quality in your house, your car, and your office. So how do you do that? You switch out the filters that are in your air conditioning systems, your furnace systems, and your car filters, because those filters are usually designed to protect the machinery, not your lungs and not your health. They're designed to protect the machinery from the bigger stuff so it doesn't gum up the works, but the smaller stuff gets through. And that's the nasty stuff that has these heavy metals connected to it, and also the viruses and pathogens. There's a lot of awareness around this now because of COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to stop this stuff from getting into you. And one of the most effective ways to do it is to get a better filter that captures these small particles. And most air conditioning service organizations and Home Depots will have these high quality filters. So consumers can actually take this in their own hands and do a big favor, not only for themselves, but for their kids, because kids are especially susceptible to this, even though it doesn't show up many, many years later. But the epigenetic effects on the children are crucial in their young life, and they only show up later when they are young adults. So
that's a very, very simple solution that people can put in, like, changing their filters with better filters and doing it regularly, because so many times we definitely change the batteries with the daylight savings time as far as the carbon monoxide and the fire alarm that we have installed in our house. But for filters, we do not put it. So like one of the ways would be like, just put in, how often would you recommend changing those? Every month, every 3 months?
I would recommend looking at the manufacturer's recommendation, because it varies, but there's a real downside to leaving your filter in. It can actually cause the problem, because as these filters clog up, guess what happens? They gather up all of these pathogens that are in them. And then you start getting problems like mold and contamination coming out of your aircon system. And so actually it makes the problem worse. To the degree, Divya, that, and this is what we specialize in, indoor air quality can be up to 8 times more polluted than outdoor air quality. And that's where you're spending 85% of your life. On average, most people in the world today spend 85% of their lives indoors, in their cars, in their homes, in their offices. So the indoor environmental quality becomes really, really important. And it's something that you can control. The other thing you can do, put a filter on your drinking water tap and make sure that that filter is designed to remove heavy metals, because a lot of filters are not. So again, read the instructions, read the manufacturer's information, and go to Consumer Reports and go to the US EPA website, but not just the US EPA website, the Canadian website, a lot of websites of environmental agencies in India and in Europe, will have this information available. So people have this information at their fingertips. They just need to go and do it. And I'll just add one little thing. And that is, some people say, oh, well, that sounds expensive. I always say, expensive compared to what? The hidden medical costs of getting sick, of your children getting sick, of their asthma getting worse, of your diabetic father or mother falling ill and going to hospital. No, this is an infinitesimal cost and a huge benefit. And by the way, for building owners, improved indoor air quality has proven to be a value proposition. The buildings that have improved indoor environmental quality sell for more, their rental space rents for more, and the owners who are also users, like, for example, owner-operators of buildings, have a reduced sickness rate in their buildings, which translates into real cash and improved performance, Divya. So getting back to the business side, if you're a leader, you want to do this. And so those are all examples of what people can do right now.
Yeah, no, these are some great examples. And you were mentioning about a test that you can show, which is a 1-minute test. Tell us about that.
Oh, okay. Well, Beyond Confidence, a great name for your show. In order to be confident, we want to look and feel our best, right? And a lot of that involves your appearance. So I want everybody, and you too, to do this little 10-second little test. So you take the back of your hand and you pinch the skin between your thumb and your forefinger like this, and you just hold it up for 2 or 3 seconds and you let it go. Okay. So in a younger person, like you, for example, it's going to snap back pretty fast. In an older person like me, you saw how slowly it went down. Now, most people are told that to look their best, they need to repair the collagen in their skin and in their body, right? You've heard that time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not correct. The reason that people are told that is because the cosmetics companies and the supplement manufacturers who are trying to fix your skin and all the flexibility throughout your body, which we'll talk about in a moment, don't know how to fix the real stuff that is doing that snaps this stuff back. And it's the same stuff that is in your arteries and your organs, including your heart and your lungs. It drives every breath you take and every step you make. It is not collagen. Collagen provides strength and rigidity to your skin and your arteries and everything else, but it doesn't provide elasticity. What provides elasticity is something known as elastin fiber. Elastin fiber is the longest lasting fiber in your body. It expands and contracts to 8 times its standing length in a fraction of a second, billions of times in your lifetime. I call it the elastic of life. And it is a truly remarkable thing. And guess what? It's damaged by these hidden stresses. And I just want to give an example, if I could, hold up to the camera here. So here you have on this side, this is really old damaged elastin in a 90-year-old. And then on this side, is nice, fresh, new elastin fiber in a 6-year-old. This is what's going on, Divya, in all of us. And so, of course, what we want to do is try and keep this stuff as long as possible in as good a shape as possible. And one of the ways that you can do that is exactly what we talked about, is to protect your body and your children's bodies and your loved ones' bodies by doing the things that we talked about. But on the therapeutic side, it has been a problem. That's why they're selling all the collagen stuff, because no one
Mhm.
knew how to fix this elastic fiber. And to be clear, elastic fiber is the stuff that allows your arteries to expand and contract to help your heart pump blood. And when I go like this, that's elastic fiber. Okay, so basically, it's one of the most important things in your body. It drives every movement. So the problem was no one knew how to fix this stuff because it's so complex. It's one of the most complex fibers in your body.
So
And
now we know
now
that
we
you
know.
figured it out.
So
Like, and I'm
now you
assuming
can
that
fix it.
it's backed by scientific studies that
Yes.
you're sharing.
Absolutely. Oh, hundreds, thousands. Actually, it's interesting because no one has heard of elastin fiber, but there's thousands of studies on it.
Well, it depends, and like as you mentioned that it may be a complex problem to solve. So have you come up with a solution or know of a solution which people can use to fix their elastin?
Yes. And this is the remarkable thing. And just a tiny little note of declaration here. I'm actually the co-founder of a company that has a technology that was pioneered by the scientists we're working with that actually fixes elastin fiber. So a quick little story. In 2007, scientists at Clemson University in South Carolina, which is well known actually for its biotechnology, discovered that a naturally derived material, a substance, which is a type of polyphenol, which is the stuff that's found, in grapes and fruits and red wine and all kinds of stuff like that. But this is a particular kind of polyphenol that is found only in a few places, like, for example, in tree bark and in the rind of the pomegranate fruit, of all things. So what they found was that this stuff kickstarts the elastin assembly process. Now, why is this so important? Because at the age of 25 to 30, every person on this planet starts to lose their elastin fiber because your body stops assembling it. No one knows why. I've talked to the top experts in the world about elastin. They don't know why your body stops doing it, but it does. So when it gets destroyed or degraded by these heavy metals that we've been talking about, there's nothing left to fix it. So what happens is your body turns on itself. It has this chronic inflammatory response trying to keep repairing this permanently damaged elastin. And this leads to hardening of the skin and arteries because your body tries to wall off the damage. This therapy has been proven to be effective in reversing that process by actually regenerating that assembly process. And another therapy has been proven effective in getting that hardening away from the elastic fiber. So there's actually two therapies. One is the repair therapy that that reverses the hardening process, and the other is the restorative therapy that kickstarts the process. Now, that was in 2007, and it was only this year that the first clinical in-human study was performed for a very important illness that millions and millions, 50 million people around the world have. You've probably heard of it for sure. It's called aneurysms. Aneurysms are really dangerous. There are these bulges in the artery, and they can burst. And when they burst, they're quite often fatal. And there is no therapy for them aside from very risky and dangerous, surgery. So what has happened is that the first clinical study showed that aneurysms can be prevented from bursting by repairing the elastin fiber in the artery. This is a remarkable finding. It's really encouraging for millions of people, and it will probably go into the clinic in the next 2 to 3 years. That is our sister company, and that they actually licensed the technology only for aneurysms from Clemson University, and congratulations to them. This is a wonderful breakthrough. Our company is focusing on the entire arterial tree because this is happening all through your body. So there's some really exciting stuff happening. And it's not just one therapy, by the way. Scientists in Australia have figured out how to repair elastic fiber in wounds and in skin by actually developing a mesh that restores the elastin fiber. So there's this whole new generation of therapies that are coming up from these scientific leaders and from the private sector who have started these startup companies that are now bringing this to market. And in Australia, the company that did the wound repair was sold in Australia's largest buyout, $250 million. And that was sold to AbbVie, and they're in the process of developing it. So it's becoming a business. It's really exciting.
Absolutely. So congratulations that your company is taking. So I'm assuming that you have a biotech company.
Yes, our company is called Elastrin Therapeutics, and it's just, elastrin.com. I named the company. It's been a journey. We started 5 years ago. I found, the scientist at Clemson University, Dr. Naren Vivahari, who is the one whose team discovered this. And Naren and I have become quite good friends, and we're in this company together. And there's a longevity investor, just talking about the theme of the show today, who is not a big pharma investor. This is what's really interesting from the business side. It's not the big pharma investors that are investing in these longevity technologies. It's the tech guys. It's the guys and women who have been involved in bootstrapping these software and tech companies. And the reason that they've become involved is one main reason. Steve Jobs died. Years ago, you might remember that the founder...
Oh, yeah. Like, he had everything at his fingertips, and the only thing he didn't have his health.
Exactly.
And if you can listen to his last very poignant words. So, we have talked about longevity, and there are a lot of other things. You have shared a lot of nuggets around longevity, but if they want to find out a whole lot more, I know you've written a book. Where can they find it? And tell us a little bit more about your book.
Well, the book is called Discovering the Nature of Longevity, Restoring the Heart and Body by Targeting Hidden Stress. I'm happy to say it started out as a bestseller on Amazon, and it bounces back and forth into bestseller territory many months after it was published. So a lot of people are finding it to be very, very, very interesting. And I'm delighted about that, because that's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to give people this information that they cannot find anywhere. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the information about elastin fiber. I couldn't find the information about the hidden stress. And I'm also happy to say that the foreword to the book is written by Dr. Gervasio Lamas, who is the chairman of cardiology at Columbia University and the author of the American Heart Association official statement on heavy metals. So there's a bit of credibility to it, with more than 700 scientific references, but it's not a science book. It's written for people who don't have a medical background, and it's full of this practical information about where these hidden stresses come from and what you can do about them today, and how you can approach your medical providers on this. And the idea here, Divya, is to get the word out, is to spread the word, because people need to demand this. It's a lot like the AIDS situation was. The therapy didn't exist until Hollywood stood up and demanded it, because a lot of stars were dying from it. And, heart disease is still the biggest killer in the world today, but we've gotten rather blasé. Oh, yes, it's the biggest killer, but you really can't do anything about it. Yes, you can. It can be reversed. There's no question about it now. But people have to demand this new approach, and that's the only way that we're going to bring it. And I have to add that the therapies that are in the market today, this infusion that I talked about at the top of the show, is actually been shown in a study that was published in 2020 to be up to 80% less expensive than the standard surgery for heart disease. And that's the problem. The problem is it's not profitable for hospitals that depend on surgery, surgeons that depend on expensive surgery, drug companies that depend on selling expensive drugs. And so the result of that, astonishingly enough, even though people have been saved from losing their legs and their limbs to heart disease, are not being told about this new therapy. The people whose limbs haven't been saved aren't being told, which is really unusual because normally you would be told. You would be, if a drug company got these kinds of results, for example, a 41% reduction in all causes of mortality amongst diabetic heart patients, the drug companies would be singing praises to the rafters and you'd be hearing about it.
Definitely. Yeah, no, this is definitely good. And you have shared some very important nuggets. And I'm sure that listeners are going to be checking it out because it's important. But if you have good health, then you can do anything in your life. So, and can you share with us where they can find you? Like, what's your website or any other place that you want to share?
Yeah, there's a lot of new information. It's really interesting. After I wrote the book, the American Heart Association came out with its official statement. The Lancet published its study on lead. I've put that new information on the website, which is natureoflongevity.com. So it's www.natureoflongevity, all one word, .com. And so people can go to the website and see all this information. But I would really urge them to go to Amazon also, because the description of the book is pretty good. And leave a review as well, as you said about your books, which are also great. It's always good when people leave a review about the book. So go to Amazon, get the book, go to www.natureoflongevity.com. And those are the two best places to go.
Oh, fantastic. I'm sure that our listeners and audience will be going because people care about that. You know, they're healthy, they look good, and you can't look good if you're not feeling well.
Exactly.
So thank you for bringing this important topic to us. And thank you for joining us, Douglas.
Diva, thank you for bringing this important topic to people and for having me on the show to talk about this. You've done a great service. Thousands and thousands of people are going to benefit from your having done this on this show today. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for joining us, because without you, the show would not be possible. And keep those comments and keep those requests coming in as to how we can make your life better and how can we help you. And thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible. Be well and take care until next time.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.